Good morning, beautiful stranger. You know what's funny about a fuse? Everyone watches the spark, but nobody respects the silence right before the boom. And you, you've been awfully, wonderfully silent lately. People have noticed. They've been whispering about you. Behind cupped hands, around corners, in rooms you just left. And the word, the delicious word, that keeps bubbling up is strategic. Very strategic, huh? Now, usually when people say strategic, they mean someone cold, clinical, some surgeon in a suit, snipping 3 stitches ahead on an operating table nobody else can see. But that's not what they mean about you. No. What they mean is something quieter, something that's been fermenting, pardon me, forming, in you for years. And honestly, it's starting to make people very, very nervous, because they're realizing you see things they don't. You move in ways they can't map. And there are exactly 2 things. 2 specific, splendid things. You do that have made every last one of them sit up straight and think, oh, this person is piloting a completely different aircraft than the rest of us. And by the end of this little performance, you're going to know exactly what those 2 things are. More than that, you're going to feel it land right in your chest, because deep down, you already know this is true about you. So, let's set the stage. Picture this. It's late. 10, 11 at night. And you're sitting somewhere quiet. Maybe your couch, maybe your car in some empty parking lot, engine cooling, just thinking, replaying something, a conversation, a decision, a moment where someone tried to shove you somewhere you didn't want to go. And in that replay, you notice something about yourself you almost take for granted. You didn't react in the moment. You paused. You felt that pull. That hot little spark in your gut screaming, say something now. Defend yourself now. And you didn't. You let it sit there like a lit match in a still room, just daring someone to breathe. And what nobody around you realizes is that pause. That wasn't hesitation. That was architecture. That was you, in real time, doing something most people simply cannot do. Choosing your next move instead of getting yanked into someone else's little puppet show. That's the first thing, and I want to linger on this one. Let it marinate. Because it's bigger than people realize. The first thing people are noticing about you is how you read situations before you respond to them. You don't just hear what someone says, you hear what's underneath it. The tone, the timing, the little cracks in their costume, the thing they didn't say. And then instead of reacting to the surface, you respond to what's actually happening. People feel this. They might not be able to name it, but they feel like you are always a half step ahead of the conversation, like you already know where the punchline lands before they've started the joke. And for some people, that's comforting, sure. But for other people, especially the ones accustomed to being the sharpest scalpel in the drawer, or used to pulling strings to their advantage, that's terrifying, you know that. Because suddenly their usual bag of tricks, the guilt trip, the little dig, the passive-aggressive comment dressed up in a concerned smile, it all just bounces off you. You just don't bite. You don't bite. And that absence of a reaction is louder than any reaction could ever be. Oh, I do love a good silence. Nothing rattles people quite like the sound of absolutely nothing. Is this really working for you? Let's try a dangerous approach. They want you silent. My book teaches you how to scream louder than them. Check out The Evolution of the Anomaly. Grab it from the description or pinned comment of this video. Anyway, back to the madness. I think a lot of you have lived through situations where someone was actively, almost artistically, trying to get you to lose your composure. Maybe more than one somebody. Maybe it felt like, for a stretch of time, you were surrounded by people poking, prodding, probing, trying to find the crack that would make you crumble. And here is where it gets a little peculiar. Because if you think back on it, they never actually got what they wanted, did they? You can probably remember the exact moments. Someone said something designed to humiliate you, or undercut you, or make you doubt yourself right there in front of everyone. And there was this split second where your whole body wanted to react. That feeling. Your face wanted to flush. Your voice wanted to rise. You wanted to defend yourself loudly, right there, right then. And instead, something in you, some part of you that's older and wiser than the rest, just held the line. You stayed level. Maybe you even smiled, or changed the subject, or, and this is my personal favorite, you just let the comment hang there in the air until it became awkward for them instead of you. Haha, beautiful. At the time, you probably didn't think of that as a power move. You probably just thought, I didn't want to make a scene, or it wasn't worth it. But from the outside, that's exactly what strategy looks like. Strategy isn't about being loud or aggressive or always having the perfect comeback. See, real strategy is restraint. It's information control. It's the art of the withheld. Every time you don't say the thing you could say, you're keeping intelligence to yourself. Intelligence about how much that comment actually stung. Intelligence about what you really think. Intelligence about your next move. And the people who were trying to provoke you. They walked away from those interactions with nothing. No reaction to feast on, no confirmation they'd gotten under your skin, no ammunition, nothing but their own echo. And that absence of feedback drives certain people absolutely up the wall. Because it means they can't read you. If they can't read you, they can't predict you. And if they can't predict you, they start to feel like they're losing some invisible tug of war they didn't even realize they'd started. Now, here is something I want you to really sit with, because I think it explains so much. A lot of you have been through periods. Maybe a relationship, maybe a job, maybe a friend group, where it felt like the people around you were constantly trying to provoke a reaction over and over and over again, almost obsessively. And in the moment, it can feel exhausting, like, why do they keep doing this? But here's the truth nobody tells you. They keep trying because it's not working. If it had worked the first time, they wouldn't need an encore. Simple logic. Even a clown can follow it. The fact that someone keeps coming back to poke the same spot means that spot isn't giving them what they want. Your composure, your refusal to spiral, your ability to just not take the bait. That's not you being passive. No. That's you being completely unreadable to people who rely on reading and controlling others. And on some level, they know it. They definitely know it. Which is exactly why it bothers them so much. So, that's the first thing. You read before you react, and you keep your responses locked up tight. Now, let's get into the second thing, because this one is honestly even more interesting, and it's the one I think really seals the whole magnificent bargain for the people watching you and going, okay, this person is operating on a whole different frequency. The second thing people are noticing is how you move. Not physically, I mean how you move through situations, through decisions, through your own life. You don't make big, dramatic proclamations about what you're going to do. You don't broadcast your blueprints. You just quietly start shifting things, and then one day, people look up and realize the entire landscape has changed. And they're sitting there sputtering, "Wait, when did this happen? How did we get here?" And the answer is, it happened gradually, deliberately. While you were just living your life and making small adjustments that nobody flagged as significant at the time. Let me sketch this out, because I think a lot of you will recognize this. Maybe there was a period where you were in a situation, a job, a relationship, a living arrangement, whatever it was, that wasn't serving you anymore. And the old version of you, or what people expected from you, would have been to either blow the whole thing sky high, big scene, ultimatum, scorched earth, or just stay stuck there forever, complaining but never actually leaving. But that's not what you did. Instead, you started making small moves. Maybe you started tucking a little money away on the side without telling a soul. Maybe you started quietly scouting other options, talking to one or two trusted people, sending out feelers. Maybe you started setting small boundaries, showing up a little less, giving a little less of yourself, redirecting your energy toward things that actually matter. None of it looked like much in any single moment, but every piece was pointing in the same direction, quietly, consistently, like dominoes being stood up in the dark. And then, at some point, and this is the part that really gets people, it just happened. You left. Or the relationship ended, or you got the new opportunity, or the situation just resolved itself in your favor. And the people who'd been watching you, who thought they had you figured out, who assumed you'd be stuck where you were forever, because that's what you'd always done before. They were stunned, because from their perspective, nothing had been building. From their perspective, you were just going about your normal life. And then suddenly everything was different. They didn't see the months of quiet construction. They didn't see the conversations you had, the research you did, the small sacrifices you made along the way. All they saw was the result. And the result looked like it appeared out of thin air, which made it look like magic or luck, or, to the more paranoid among them, like you'd been engineering this the whole time and just hadn't told a soul. And honestly, in a way you had been, not in some sinister, calculated way. Well, not entirely, but in the sense that some part of you, your intuition, your gut, had already made the decision long before your conscious mind caught up. You felt the shift coming before you could explain it, and instead of waiting for permission, or waiting until you had every last detail drafted in triplicate, you just started moving in that direction, one small step at a time. That's the second thing people are noticing. You don't wait for the dramatic moment to make your move. You're already moving, quietly, consistently. Long before anyone else even realizes the whole scenery has changed. And here is where these two things come together. Because on their own, each one is impressive. But together, they're what makes people describe you as intimidating. Think about it from their perspective for a second. They're dealing with someone who doesn't react the way they expect, who stays calm when they expect chaos, who doesn't give away a single clue about what they're thinking or feeling. That's unsettling on its own. But now, layer on someone who is also quietly, consistently advancing toward a better situation, a better life, a better version of themselves, without ever announcing it. From the outside, that combination looks like someone who is always one step ahead, who cannot be provoked and cannot be predicted, who seems to just win eventually. without ever appearing to break a sweat. And to people who operate through drama, through control, through keeping others off balance, that combination is genuinely intimidating, because it means their usual tools don't work on you. You can't be baited into a reaction. You can't be boxed into staying somewhere you've already decided to leave. Now. I want to take a second here because I think it's important to acknowledge something. A lot of you have been through real difficulty to get to this point. This isn't some abstract personality trait you were born with. A lot of you developed this. The composure, the quiet forward motion, because you had to. Maybe there was a stretch of your life where reacting emotionally just wasn't safe, wasn't useful. So you learned to hold things in, process them internally instead. Maybe there was a period where you felt stuck, and the only way out was to start making tiny moves in private, because announcing your plans out loud would have invited too much resistance, too many people trying to talk you out of it, or wrench the steering wheel. So in a strange way, the very things that make you seem intimidating now, the composure, the quiet strategy, those were survival skills first. They were how you navigated something hard. And now, on the other side of that, they've become part of who you are. And they're working in your favor in ways you might not even fully appreciate yet. And I think that's part of why this feels like it's landing for so many of you right now. Because there's probably a part of you that's been a little tired. Tired of having to be so guarded, so composed, so quietly strategic all the time. And I want to be really clear, none of this means you have to keep doing it that way forever, or that you have to keep everyone at arm's length. But what it does mean is that the instincts you've built, to read a room, to stay level when everyone else is losing it, to make progress even when things look stuck on the surface, those instincts are real. They're yours, and they're not going anywhere. You learned them. You earned them, even if the way you earned them wasn't exactly a good time. Funny how that works. Now, here's something else worth pondering. Have you ever noticed how, after you've made one of these quiet moves, after you finally left a situation, or finally set a boundary, or finally pivoted towards something better, the people who were the most surprised are often the people who were the most invested in you, staying exactly where you were. Let that land. That's not a coincidence. People who profit from you being predictable, available, reactive, stuck. Those people have a vested interest in believing they know exactly who you are and exactly what you'll do. So when you do something they didn't see coming, it doesn't just surprise them. It threatens their whole sense of control. And some of them respond by getting defensive or dismissive, acting like whatever you did wasn't a big deal, or that you got lucky, or that you must have had help, because the idea that you figured it out yourself, quietly, on your own timeline, that's a little too uncomfortable for them to sit with. Isn't it always? But here's the thing about people who are intimidated by quiet strategy. They almost never say it directly. Instead, it seeps out sideways, maybe as a backhanded compliment. Well. Look at you now, said in a tone that's not quite congratulatory. Or maybe a sudden renewed interest from someone who'd been distant, because on some level they sense the dynamic has shifted, and they want back in before they lose whatever leverage they used to have. Or maybe it just shows up as people being a little more careful around you, a little more polite, choosing their words a little more deliberately than they used to. And if you've noticed any of that lately, People treating you slightly differently, slightly more cautiously, almost like they're recalibrating. That's not in your head. That's the shift. That's people updating their mental map of who you are, because the old one doesn't fit anymore. Let's talk about what this actually feels like from your side, because I think it's worth naming. There is often this strange in-between period where you know something has changed in you. You can feel it. You can see it in how you're handling things differently. But the people around you haven't caught up yet. They're still treating you like the version of you from a year ago, or 5. And that gap can feel a little lonely, like you're walking around with this whole internal renovation that nobody else can see yet. But that gap doesn't last forever. Eventually, your actions start to speak for themselves, and people either adjust to the new reality, or they don't. And if they don't, well, that tells you something very important about where they actually stand. I also want to point something out about the timing, because I don't think it's random that this is landing for you right now. A lot of you are standing at some kind of threshold, even if it doesn't feel dramatic on the surface. Maybe it's a decision you've been quietly turning over. Maybe it's a situation that's felt stagnant, but you can feel something starting to stir underneath. And what I want you to know is, whatever quiet groundwork you've already started, even if it feels small, even if nobody else knows about it yet, it's working. The two things we've talked about, your ability to stay composed and read situations clearly, and your ability to make consistent, quiet progress without needing to announce it, those two things together are exactly what's going to carry you through whatever this next act is. You don't need a dramatic moment. You don't need everyone's approval or their understanding. You just need to keep doing what you've already been doing, because it's working, even when it doesn't feel like it.